Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, creator and executive producer of the world's next big thing, Errol Silverman. Hey, what you drinking? Okay, this conversation is going to be a big thing. As a matter of fact, it might be one of the biggest things in the world. So you might want to pull over. I would not advise listening to this in your car unless you've got a really, really reliable cruise control. Because I have got with me a guest who contacted me and said, hey, look, Galen, I'm working on the world's next big thing and wanted to know how you might be involved or if this is something you might even be interested in playing with. And I was curious and enjoyed the conversation so much. I said, we got to bring this to Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. So with that, I want to introduce to everyone, Mr. Errol Silverman. Errol, how are you doing, man? What's going on?
I am good. Great to see you, Galen. It's a pleasure to be here on Whiskey and Jazz podcast with you. Thank you for the intro. You're making my head swell. And yeah, we did have a great conversation, and I'm flattered you're having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Well, hey, so there's a lot to talk about. We already started talking about my daughter, and I'm like, okay, we got to end that because we could spend the entire 3 hours talking about my daughter. But I want to start this conversation. But my listeners know that the conversation has its official start by my asking you this incredibly important, life-changing, with the world freedom weighing in the balance. So what you drinking?
I am drinking, well, two answers to that question. I have my water, and then I have my hidden Diet Coke that my wife doesn't let me drink. So I'm double fisting.
Hey. Well, tell your wife she needs to subscribe to Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership, and then she'll find out what you're drinking.
Yeah, I'll be sleeping on the couch for the rest of the year.
That just means that I've got to make sure that I maintain the integrity of the name of the podcast and come with some real good and seasoned whiskey juice. And I decided to go with something that I was introduced to again recently. About 3 years ago, someone mentioned a list of whiskeys that they recommended that I try. And one was Chestnut Farms, but he listed that in a list of other whiskeys that I thought were incredibly impressive. And because I can only do so much, I picked the other ones, right? I picked the other ones. And I doubled back and remembered that he mentioned Chestnut Farms. And they were just coming out with, the store was just putting on the shelf a single barrel. So Chestnut Farms, single barrel, aged 8 years. This is non-chill filtered from the same makers of Barton 1792. But this is clocking in at 125 proof. So this is grown folks stuff. But we're going to be talking about the world's next big thing. So I thought, why not go with the next, possibly my next favorite whiskey. So I'm just going to crack this one open. Let's get this. And just pour some. Because at 125, you can't play around too much.
No matches around.
Yeah, really. And, I think everything I tend to drink usually has like a hint of caramel in it. Caramel and or vanilla. And this does not disappoint. I definitely get that. So I'm going to enjoy this Chestnut Farms barrel proof, I would love for you to talk about your background and kind of all the things that you've done that's kind of led to where we are now. Kind of an interesting background, but it kind of fits and it does set the stage for what you're getting into. So I'd love to have you take my listeners on that journey.
Absolutely. So there's no common thread through my resume. I first job out of college, I was a stockbroker. I was making 800 cold calls a day. I'd start at 7 in the morning because that's when business owners are there and oftentimes the first ones. And then at 9 p.m., blue laws made me stop. So my grandparents lived in Arizona. They gave me their phone book so I could call till 11 p.m. East Coast because it was only 9 p.m. there. So then I got into radio and media. And then throughout that, I always had side hustles, start a bunch of startups. And then taking my media, my finance, and startup background, I came up with the idea of World's Next Big Thing. And what it is it's a television show like Shark Tank, and that entrepreneurs pitch looking to raise capital for their startups. But all the entrepreneurs, either Black or Latino, and instead of the panel of sharks investing, the viewers of the show can invest through our SEC regulated broker dealer right from their phones for as little as $10. So the mission is to help chip away at the racial wealth gap because up to this point, VCs have only invested less than 2% into Black and brown entrepreneurs. So my goal is to get the crowd involved to change that. So that's what I've been working on. That's been a huge project and a passion of mine. And we're excited. We're working with the SEC now, getting all the entrepreneurs that are going to be on the show regulated through the SEC. It's exciting. I'm like bursting out of my skin, just waiting for the show to premiere.
Now, I'm curious, why this? Why is this such a passion of yours? Because this does not seem like the easiest way to make a buck. Why is this so important to you?
For a number of reasons. I've been working with marginalized communities for the past 30 years, both as mainly as a volunteer. And when my daughter was diagnosed with autism 6 years ago, I thought to myself, God blessed me with this beautiful child because God knew that I would be very patient and love her, but also gave me a crazy entrepreneurial mind because God knew that I would take that crazypreneur mind and use the fact that I was blessed with a special needs daughter to empower myself to really make a difference. So I knew the next chapter of my life was going to be figuring out a way to scale change. And having a startup, a finance, and a media background, and being a big fan of the show Shark Tank, I had this idea. So, of course, I had to talk to a lot of experts. I traveled the world virtually and talked to all the experts on the racial wealth gap. I even wrote a book, which needs to be edited, on the racial wealth gap, and really learned every little granularity of it, and just got the right team around me because I'm just a little cog. It's the amazing people around me that are really going to bring into fruition. So yes, it's not, a TV show is actually the easy part, as crazy as that sounds. It's all the pieces around the TV show that are very involved.
Yeah, wow. So I definitely want to talk to you about what goes into making and producing and creating a TV show, because that's incredibly fascinating. I'm also curious about this idea of the racial wealth gap, because there's a lot in the narrative today that says, first of all, there is no racial wealth gap. That is something that's made up. That's not a real thing. I hear people saying that. And then I hear people saying, well, the answer is folks just need to work hard, right? If they just work harder, then, that's the answer. You don't need to have a television show, just work harder. So help me dispel both of those narratives First of all, have you heard those narratives? Do you hear those narratives? And then, if so, how do you handle that?
Yes. Well, people say a lot of crazy things that the world is flat. And, unfortunately, and this has come to light, systemic racism is rampant. And so people of color, especially growing up in marginalized communities, they work twice as hard to get half as far. And people think, oh, they just enjoy living off the system. The system doesn't pay a lot. And, and a lot of these people are working two full-time jobs. So I would say that people that are kind of have their head in the sand and don't think there's a racial wealth gap, do they know that 2 + 2 = 4? you can follow the data, and it's actually more severe than the numbers tell us, because a lot of affluent people, oftentimes white, don't necessarily put on their tax returns realistic figures. So I think it's actually significantly more, but I estimate it's in the about $35 trillion
Wow.
just in this country alone. But if everybody had access to the same resources and opportunities, there would be so much more innovation. We could have a cure for cancer. We could have flying cars. Just in this process of meeting with these genius entrepreneurs, I can't get into it because of the legality and the network, but some of these companies are literally mind-blowing, Galen. Like, it's unbelievable. And it's going to wake the world up and say, listen, we could have created so many more jobs because of these brilliant inventions or different things that could change health equity. One of the companies, and I'll touch on it a little, it's a company that literally could take a restaurant, a crowded restaurant of 200 people, each coughing with COVID, and it would suck the COVID right out of the air. I mean, to me, that's it. I can't even wrap my head around it, but that's the kind of genius. So, when people say stuff like that, people can say anything, and it's just ignorance, and but you just kind of look at them like, how many teeth do you have in your mouth?
Yeah, I'm always amazed when I hear those kinds of comments, and this is actually a conversation I had on, I think, season 2 conversation with Rada Yavovich. So definitely peel back and check out. I think she was episode 1, season 2, and I talked about how I really enjoy talking to people who have a different perspective than I do, right? I just really enjoy it because there's, contrary to what my mom says and what my mom believes, there's a chance that I could be wrong. There's a chance that I might not have all the answers. And so by talking to people who have a different background, a different perspective, a different lens on the world than I do, I get to close down my own ignorance gap. But in today's environment, there's really not a whole lot of room for talking to people who have a different perspective, because if you don't agree with I do, then society says I need to destroy you, right? We can't have a conversation. I need to destroy you. And that really minimizes the value of diversity. The value of diversity in my mind is really around, can we get different ideas in the room? Can we get different ideas in the room? And so I love the premise of what you're creating here, because we're not getting similar ideas from the same avenues. We're getting different ideas because it's coming from different vantage points. So, hey, I want to use your creativity, use your expertise, use your experience to help me articulate the meaning of this podcast. I like to ask all my guests to kind of help me redefine and articulate the meaning of this podcast. So as I shared with you, I like whiskey, I like jazz, I like leadership, literally. I think I shared with you before the show, I got like, I don't know, it's probably up to like 85 bottles of whiskey right now. And 80 of those bottles are open and they are in rotation. And those other 5 bottles, they're waiting their turn. And boy, I tell you, it's that their turn is coming. So I am not a collector. So I like whiskey. I also love the metaphor of whiskey. And for me, the metaphor of whiskey is the social element of doing what you enjoy with the folks you enjoy it with. I can drink whiskey by myself. It's just not as fun. I usually like to drink it with someone. And who cares if the folks outside of my room, they don't enjoy whiskey, because this is about the folks that are in the room enjoying it with me. And so that's the metaphor of whiskey. The metaphor of jazz for me, whether you're listening to Miles Davis, whether you're listening to John Coltrane, whether you're listening to Stan Getz, it really doesn't matter. For me, the metaphor of jazz is, how do you get from where you are to where you need to be, even in those situations where sheet music isn't available and there's no script in front of you, and you still have to figure out how to get there. As Miles Davis once said, I don't want you to play what's on the paper. I want you to play what's not on the paper, because that's where the real magic is. And so how do you in your life get from where you are to where you need to be, even when things aren't spelled out, and leave room for magic? And then the metaphor for leadership, I've spent my entire life studying leader, being led by incredible leaders, trying to lead myself in some pretty intense situations for some of the largest brands on the planet. And then the last quarter of my life has spent learning leadership, coaching leaders, literally all over the world. So, two of my books are on leadership. That's my thing. My tech-com branding is the leadership strategist. So I love leadership, literally. But the metaphor of leadership is, marketing is a lot of fun, and it's important. Strategy, critically important. But nobody eats unless somebody kills something. Someone has to say, this is what we're going to do starting now. And until someone says starting now and actually takes action, then we're just talking about it, and nothing's ever really going to happen. So how does the metaphor of whiskey, jazz, and leadership play into how you've been successful and some of the things that you're working on now with the next big thing?
I would say, in terms of get good people around you, find people that you trust, empower them. A good leader is somebody that knows that they don't have all the right answers. And regardless of somebody, whether they're homeless or a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, everybody has great ideas, and it can really come, and it's their strength and diversity. So I would say, in terms of just surrounding yourself with the right people, leave your ego at the door, and just relax. I mean, if you can't try to enjoy what you do. I mean, I've had jobs, especially in high school. I was a stock boy, and there's only so much fun you can make it out to be. I could really create a game out of sorting tube socks, but you build friendships there. Just relaxing, being able to be, and I hate to use the term your authentic self because it's an overused term, but you're at work, especially, in my line of work, being in the startup world, you're working nonstop. So you don't want to have to put on a facade or just worry about optics. You want people to, understand, and you want to be understanding as well.
There's a misconception about the idea of entrepreneurship. And I can tell you, before I got into this, I thought to myself, wow, this would be easy. I'll just do what I've been doing in corporate America, but I'll keep all the money. And I mean, that's kind of the concept, but there's a lot that goes into being able to actually generate the money, right? It's like, you're the one that has to do the marketing. You're the one that has to do the manufacturing. You're the one that has to think through, all these things that actually go into creating a thing. And if you're waiting for a script, if you're waiting for sheet music to tell you to play this note on Tuesday this way, yeah, I mean, you can wait and hopefully maybe it'll come. I haven't experienced it. What's been your experience with waiting for someone to tell you what to do and how to do it? as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so that's funny. I mean, in terms of, yes, I'm a big idea of being organized and putting it on paper and building a business plan, whether it's external or you're looking for investors. But as soon as you hit the ground running, it's going to evolve. You can't read a book by Warren Buffett and exactly duplicate what he's done. And a lot of people will buy, courses on how to earn 7 figures a month, passive income, and they tell you exactly how to do it. In theory, I've had success. So, for example, one of my businesses, iPhone accessories, and Amazon was around, but it was before it really took off. And I sold over 3 years, and I was selling a number of different things, but I sold $8 million in just iPhone accessories. And then I thought to myself, I had a lot of success. I'm going to duplicate what I did. And I duplicated it to the T, and I think I made like $500. So when people say, "Oh, this guy, he has, an ebook and a course, and he's already," and I saw his Google Analytics, and he's making all this money. There's a lot more to it than that. You can't see a guy making, $1 million selling pizza and then think you could duplicate it in every corner of America. There's so much to it. And a lot of the things I've learned is from my mistakes, because if you're not born with tremendous wealth, which I wasn't, it hurts when you lose money. Oh. So a lot of what I learned is, you touch the stove, you burn your hand, you try not to touch it again.
Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.